Papa, look! 2-year-old Leo Thorne broke away from his father's hand and raced ahead, his little boots making splashes in the puddles. Leo, stop! But the child had already reached the woman, pulling on her sleeve and staring up into her face. Papa! His tone was absolute. Papa, that is my mama. Kyle Thorne's world shattered. Every wall he had spent 3 years building collapsed in that one, impossible second. Before this story goes on, let me know where you are watching from. This is a story about a woman who was stolen from her family, locked away for 3 years, and told that everyone she loved had forgotten her. But she never stopped believing. And this is also a story about a man who thought he lost everything, who buried his heart in rage and grief, only to discover that the truth had been twisted all along. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you have ever felt powerless against people who seemed untouchable, this story will show you something important. Real strength is not about revenge. It is about protecting the ones you love. And sometimes, the child who sees the world with innocent eyes can recognize the truth that adults have been too broken to see. Stay until the end, because the lesson in this story might be exactly what you need to hear today. And if you feel something from this, please subscribe because I have a truly special story waiting for you tomorrow. Now, let us get right back to the story. The rain made the October afternoon feel cold and gray. Kyle glanced at his watch. They had enough time for a short walk before they needed to go home. It was meant to be a simple, safe, and normal day. Papa, I am cold. I know, little man. Kyle knelt down, his hands gently adjusting Leo's hood. The boy's cheeks were flushed pink from the chilly air. 5 more minutes, and then we will have hot chocolate at home. With marshmallows. Kyle found himself smiling. With marshmallows. Leo could always draw a smile from him, even on the most difficult days. The park was nearly empty, with only a few joggers and people sitting on benches. The first bodyguard stood several feet behind them, holding an umbrella. The second bodyguard kept watch from farther up the path. This was Kyle's life now, a world of caution and protection. But Leo made all of it worthwhile. The boys' easy laughter and endless questions about everything made Kyle feel like a person again. And then Kyle heard it. A quiet, broken sob that carried through the sound of the rain. She is here, Papa. Leo pointed down the walkway. That lady is crying. Kyle's eyes followed his son's finger, and his heart stopped. She was sitting on the wet ground about 30 feet from them. She had curled her body into a small ball. Her clothes were ripped and covered in mud. Her hair was loose and soaked with rain. Her feet were completely bare. And her face. Kyle recognized that face. That is not possible, he breathed. The first bodyguard stepped closer. Boss, are you all right? Kyle could not find the words to respond. He could not even breathe. Serafina. Sarah. The woman he had loved. The woman who had died 3 years ago. The woman whose funeral he attended beside a coffin that was empty. She was gone. But then she lifted her head. Her eyes met his through the falling rain, and Kyle saw it in her gaze. True recognition. It was mixed with pain, shock, and a desperate kind of hope. Leo suddenly broke free from his grasp and ran. No, Leo. But the boy was already at her side, reaching for the woman with his small, open arms. Papa, she is crying. Help her. Kyle willed his legs to move. His bodyguards moved with him, their expressions alert and prepared for anything. They were watching him, seeing their leader fall apart. Son, step back. Step. Kyle's voice was shaking. But Papa, she needs help. Leo, please. Kyle reached for his son, his touch more gentle this time. He could only focus on the woman before him and the question of whether she was even real. He knelt on the ground next to her. He was close enough to see the tiny cuts on her face, close enough to see her hands trembling, close enough to see that the eyes looking back at him, wide and frightened and painfully familiar, belonged to Serafina. This was not a trick. It was her. Get her to her feet, Kyle said without hesitation. We have to get her somewhere warm right now. The first bodyguard lifted her gently. She offered no resistance, simply leaning against him as if she had no strength left to stand. "Where are we taking her, boss?" "The safe house on 5th. The one equipped with a medical room." Kyle scooped Leo into his arms. "And make the call. I want the medic there when we arrive." Leo wiggled in his father's arms, trying to get a better look at the woman. "Papa, where are we taking the lady? To a safe place. Is she sick?" "Yes, but the doctors are going to help her. Will you stay with her?" "She looks very scared." A lump formed in Kyle's throat. "We will see, buddy." The ride was silent. Sarah sat in the back of the sport utility vehicle, looking out the windows at streets she had not laid eyes on in years. Kyle watched her, noticing her nervousness and the way her hands clutched the edge of the seat. Leo had fallen asleep between them, exhausted by the day's events. When he woke up, he looked at Sarah with wide eyes, as if to confirm she was still there. Then, without any prompting, Leo slowly extended his hand. "Do not be scared," the little boy said in a soft voice. "Papa is going to help you." Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. Her hand moved to meet Leo's, and their fingers touched. She gently pressed his small hand against her cheek, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you," she whispered. Kyle felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he believed was lost to him forever. His own hand came to rest on Leo's coat, very close to where Sarah's hand was. They did not touch, but they were almost there. The safe house came into view, a clean and quiet building that promised protection. When the vehicle came to a stop, Sarah got out slowly, still holding onto Leo's hand. They stood together on the sidewalk, and Kyle moved to stand beside them. "Tomorrow," Kyle said, "I will bring Leo back in the morning. I promise you." "Tomorrow," Sarah repeated, her voice full of hope. Leo looked from his father to his mother, and then he smiled. Kyle's hand settled on his son's shoulder, right next to Sarah's. Their fingers were very close now, almost brushing against each other. "She is not going anywhere," Kyle stated firmly. "And neither are we." Sarah smiled through her tears, and it was a real smile. Kyle gave a nod to his bodyguard, who then escorted Sarah inside. She glanced back just once, her eyes locking with Kyle's, before she vanished behind the door. "Papa," Leo let out a yawn. "Are we going to be okay now?" Kyle lifted his son and held him tight against his chest. "Yes, buddy. We are going to be just fine." Kyle felt a warmth inside him, something he thought had disappeared forever. For a few moments he just stood there, watching Sarah go into the safe house. Then his training took over. He had to find out what happened, how she was still alive, and what he needed to do next. "Get her settled in," Kyle ordered the first bodyguard. "Make sure she has everything she needs. The medic needs to give her a complete examination." "Already on it, boss." The trip to the safe house had taken 12 minutes. Kyle sat in the back with Leo resting on his lap, his thoughts a whirlwind of questions. If Sarah was alive, then who was in the fire? Who had fabricated the evidence? And why would she appear now, after 3 long years? Leo shifted against his chest. "Papa." The lady looked very tired. "She is, buddy. She has been through a great deal. Will she be all right?" "Yes, we are going to make certain of it." Kyle held his son a little tighter. That was one promise he fully intended to keep. The safe house was a renovated building in a quiet part of the city. It was clean, secure, and fully supplied with anything they could possibly need. Kyle had used it on 2 other occasions, and both times, everyone involved had walked away safely. His head of security met them at the door. "The building is secure, boss. The medic is upstairs waiting for you." "Good. Post 2 guards at every entrance. Nobody gets in or out unless I say so." "Understood." The interior of the building was spotless and well cared for. The medical room was located on the 3rd floor, a bright space that was equipped like a small doctor's office. Sarah was already inside, lying on the examination bed while the medic checked her vital signs. She was conscious now, her eyes looking much clearer than they had before. Kyle set Leo down near the doorway. "Stay right here for a minute." "Okay. But I want to see her. Just give me 1 minute and then you can come over. Kyle's voice was gentle, but it held a firm tone. He walked toward the bed, stopping a few feet away. The medic glanced up. She is cold and suffering from dehydration. She has some bruises and cuts, but nothing that appears serious. She needs rest and proper food. She will make a full recovery. Can she talk? Yes, she is doing better now that she is warm. Kyle nodded his head and waited until he and Sarah were alone, except for his bodyguards. He looked directly at Sarah's face. She met his gaze with a look of nervous hope. Serafina, his voice was steady. Do you know who I am? Her eyes remained fixed on his face. Kyle, she whispered, her voice hoarse but clear. Hearing his name from her felt like a punch to the gut, but in a good way, like rediscovering a song you thought you had forgotten. Boss. The second bodyguard looked up from his laptop. Facial recognition confirms her identity. Serafina Vasco, last seen 3 years ago. It is definitely her. Run a complete background check. I need to know everything. Kyle did not take his eyes off Sarah's face. On it. Papa. Leo's small voice cut through the tension. The boy had quietly moved closer to the bed and was reaching for Sarah's hand. Papa, can I hold her hand now? Kyle looked at his son, and then he looked at Sarah. Her expression was filled with such gentle hope. He took a deep breath. Yes, buddy, you can hold her hand. A bright smile spread across Leo's face. He carefully took Sarah's hand between both of his little ones. Hi, I am Leo. What is your name? Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, but she was smiling. I am Sarah. It is so very nice to meet you, Leo. You are really pretty, even with that sad face. She let out a soft laugh, a sound that made Kyle's chest ache. Thank you, sweetheart. Kyle watched the two of them together, and he saw it instantly. They had the same eyes, the same smile. The way Leo tilted his head was exactly the way Sarah used to. Boss. The second bodyguard cleared his throat. The initial search is not showing anything suspicious. There is no criminal history, no red flags. She is clean. Keep digging anyway. Sarah looked at Kyle. I know you must have questions. I will tell you everything. Just please do not send me away yet. I am not sending you anywhere. Kyle's voice was resolute. But I do need answers, starting with where you have been for the last 3 years. She drew a shaky breath. They took me that night at the coffee shop. I never even made it through the door. Someone grabbed me, and when I came to, I was locked in a basement. Kyle's jaw clenched. Who? Your second in command. He told me he wanted your organization. He needed you to be broken so that your own people would turn on you. Sarah's voice grew stronger with each word. He faked all of it. The video showing me with your rival, the evidence, it was all fabricated. The explosion. That was his escape. He wanted everyone to believe I was dead so you would stop searching for me. She paused for a moment. But he kept me alive, he said, as a form of insurance, in case he needed control. Kyle's fists tightened. 3 years. For 3 entire years, she was gone, and he had believed she was the one who betrayed him. So what changed? He demanded. Why are you out now? He died 6 months ago, a heart attack. But his partner took over. Viktor Kozlov. She glanced down at her bare feet. He is worse, Kyle. So much worse. Your second in command kept me locked away, but Kozlov, he wanted to break me completely. He told me every single day that you had moved on, that you had a new woman, that my baby was dead. Kyle felt his blood turn to ice. What did you just say? Sarah's voice cracked. They told me our baby did not survive. For 3 years, I believed I had lost my child before I ever got to hold him. She looked at Leo with fresh tears streaming down her face. And then I escaped, and I saw you in the park with him. I saw his face. I saw my eyes looking back at me. And I knew they had lied about everything. Leo climbed onto the bed and wrapped his small arms around Sarah. Do not cry. I am right here. I am not dead. I am right here with you. Kyle had to turn away. His hands were shaking. The rage building inside him was unlike anything he had ever felt. They had not just stolen Sarah from him, they had tortured her with the cruelest lie imaginable. They had made her believe her own child was dead. I have to see proof, he said, his voice barely controlled. Let me see your left shoulder. Sarah's hand moved to her shoulder. With a slight tremble, she lowered the fabric of the hospital gown. He remembered the scar, a bullet graze from long ago. A newer, uglier mark was next to it, but the old scar was undeniable. He tried to burn it off me, she whispered, so I could never be identified. He just did not go deep enough. Kyle stared at the truth branded on her skin. But there was more. Beneath the burn mark, he could see other scars. Thin lines. Cigarette burns. The evidence of 3 years of systematic cruelty. I believe you, he finally said. Relief washed over her face, and it crumpled. Thank you. Oh, thank you. But Sarah, my world is complicated now. Our life, it is not safe. Kyle dragged a hand through his hair. You will stay here, where you can be protected. You will have good security, everything you need. Leo and I are going to visit you every single day. Every day? Her voice was filled with a hope he had not heard in years. Starting tomorrow morning? He glanced at Leo. Is that right, buddy? Right. We are having breakfast together. With hesitation, Sarah reached for Kyle's hand. He allowed her to take it. Her skin was cold, but her grasp was firm. 1 week, Kyle declared. That gives you 1 week to recover. 1 week for us to make a plan. After that, we decide what is next. Together? She asked. The word was a question full of possibility that hung in the space between them. Kyle gave her hand a single squeeze before carefully letting go. He could not think straight while touching her. Come on, Leo. We should let Sarah get some sleep. But Papa, I only just met her, and you said you will see her tomorrow. First thing, just like I promised. Kyle lifted his son into his arms. She needs to rest. You can see how exhausted she is. Leo's expression softened as he looked at Sarah. Okay, but you have to promise you will come back, I promise. Sarah gave them both a small smile. I will be right here. I am not going anywhere again. During the drive home, Leo was a storm of happy chatter about Sarah, firing off a dozen questions Kyle had no answers for. After they arrived home, Kyle put his son to bed, sitting on the edge and stroking his hair. Papa? Leo asked in a sleepy voice. Why did that bad man take Sarah? A tightness seized Kyle's chest. Because some people in this world do terrible things, buddy, but she is okay now. And we will make certain she stays that way, because we are a family. Yes, because we are a family. A smile touched Leo's lips as he closed his eyes, and he was asleep moments later. Kyle remained there for a while, just watching him breathe, marveling at how one afternoon had changed everything. Down in his office, Kyle poured a drink before pulling open the bottom drawer of his desk. The pressed jasmine was still inside, its petals faded and delicate. He had stared at it 1,000 times over the last 3 years, each time with rage and the sour taste of betrayal. Now, a different feeling surfaced as he looked at it. Regret, hope, a deep fear that this was a second chance he did not deserve. His thoughts drifted to 4 years ago, to a time when his life was not so complicated. He had met Sarah at a fundraiser he was only attending to make business connections. She wore a simple white dress and had the warmest smile he had ever witnessed. She was a nurse, from a world completely separate from his, and had no clue about the man he really was. Their first official date was at a botanical garden. He had felt foolish surrounded by flowers, but Sarah made it seem natural. She had laughed when he did not know the names of the plants, and then she tucked a jasmine flower behind his ear. There, she had said, now you almost look friendly. They had 6 months of secret moments and late-night conversations. She eventually understood the business he was in, But she did not run. "I can see the man you are underneath it all," she had told him. "And that is the man I am in love with." A year later, she begged him to walk away. "We can begin again," she had pleaded. "A new town, different names, a new life with just the two of us." He had wanted it more than anything. So, he began making quiet arrangements, setting up their escape with his most trusted people. Only his second-in-command knew every single detail, the one man Kyle would have bet his life on. On the night it all went wrong, Sarah was across town looking at properties with a real estate agent. Kyle was at the warehouse confirming the final arrangements when his second-in-command came in holding a laptop. "Boss, you have to see this." The screen showed Sarah inside what appeared to be a rival's office, passing him a small flash drive. Her voice was on the audio, promising to trade information for a large sum of money. Kyle's first thought was to call her and demand an explanation, but then the warehouse exploded. 4 of his men were killed, including his second-in-command. In the wreckage, they recovered human remains. Dental records confirmed one of the bodies was Sarah. Kyle had been in a different section when the bomb went off, far enough to survive. At her funeral, he had stared at an empty casket and felt absolutely nothing. The sorrow had already hardened into something cold and sharp that kept him going. But sitting in his office now, holding the flower, Kyle saw how many things were wrong with that night. He saw the perfect timing of the explosion. He saw how convenient it was that his right-hand man supposedly died before he could be questioned, and he finally understood the truth. His second-in-command had faked his own death and escaped with Koslov. He had been expertly played by the one person he trusted most, and Sarah had been the one to suffer for it. A knock on the office door shattered his thoughts. A guard stepped inside with a tablet. "Boss, we found something. Your old second-in-command was hiding several offshore accounts. We found huge deposits that began months before the explosion. We also found a link to Viktor Kozlov, the same rival Sarah was supposedly meeting in that video." Kyle put his glass down. "What kind of link?" "It is a money trail, a big one. It looks like they were partners, planning to take you out. And Koslov is still active. He has been running the operation that held Sarah captive for the past 6 months." Kyle's voice was dangerously quiet, but his mind was already moving. "What are your orders?" "Find me everything. I want every account, every transfer, every single person who was involved. I want a list of every person who helped ruin my life 3 years ago." Kyle rose and walked over to the window. "After that, we are going to pay a visit to Mr. Kozlov. It will be a very personal visit." "Understood, boss." When the guard was gone, Kyle took out his phone to check the time. It was almost midnight. It was too late to call Sarah, but he ached to hear her voice, just to know she was still real and still safe. He sent a text message to the security detail instead. "What is the status?" The reply was almost instant. "All is quiet. The subject is sleeping. She ate dinner. The doctor confirms she just needs rest." A wave of relief washed over Kyle. She was secure. She was recovering. Tomorrow, the 3 of them would eat breakfast as a family, and they would begin to build a new life out of the ashes. He looked at the jasmine one last time before gently placing it back inside the drawer. Tomorrow, he would ask if she remembered giving it to him. Tomorrow, he would confess that he never threw it away. Tomorrow, he would begin to atone for 3 years of believing a lie. Tomorrow could not arrive soon enough. That night, Kyle found no rest. When he shut his eyes, he saw Sarah's rain-soaked face. He saw Leo reaching for her. And he saw 3 years of his own failure. At 5 in the morning, he abandoned any hope of sleep and went to the kitchen for coffee. At 6, Leo was awake and vibrating with energy. "Is it time now, Papa? Can we go to Sarah's?" "Almost, buddy. We should get you some breakfast first." "But I want to have breakfast with Sarah. You made a promise." A tired smile touched Kyle's lips. "You are right, I did. Go on and get dressed, and we will take breakfast there." 20 minutes later, They were on the road with bags filled with pastries, fruit, and juice. Leo chattered for the entire drive, making a list of things to tell Sarah, wondering if she liked dinosaurs and big trucks. "What if she does not like the stuff I like?" Leo asked, a sudden worry on his face. "Then you get to teach her about new things. That is part of being a family." The safe house was quiet in the early morning. Kyle's security men gave him a nod as they went inside, confirming the night had been uneventful. Sarah was already up, sitting in a small room on the second floor. She was in clean clothes that fit her properly. Her hair was clean, her face was scrubbed, and while she was still clearly exhausted, a bit of color had returned to her cheeks. She got to her feet as they came in, her expression a mix of nervousness and hope. "Hi," she said, her voice soft. "Hi," Kyle answered, lifting the bags. "We have breakfast." Leo immediately ran to her and threw his arms around her waist. "Good morning, Sarah. I have a chocolate croissant for you. Papa says they make the best ones." Sarah hugged him tightly, and Kyle could see fresh tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "Good morning, my sweet boy. That sounds wonderful." They all sat at a little table near the window. Leo talked without stopping, describing his toys and his favorite stories, and proudly demonstrating that he could count all the way to 20. Sarah hung on his every word as if it were treasure, asking him questions and laughing at all his jokes. Kyle just watched them, feeling a warmth spread through his chest that was almost like peace. "So," Sarah began, during a brief lull in Leo's stories. "So, what is your life like, Leo? What things do you enjoy?" "My favorites are dinosaurs and blocks, and Dad reads to me before bed every single night." Leo tore off a piece of his croissant. "And you? What do you enjoy?" "I love flowers, and I love to read." She paused for a moment, her gaze shifting to Kyle. "I once loved gardens, places full of plants with quiet walkways." "We have a garden where we live," Leo declared. "Dad has no idea what the flowers are called, but they look nice." Sarah let out a bright, honest laugh that stole Kyle's breath. "That sounds exactly like him." "You recall that?" Kyle asked softly. "It was our first date, at the botanical garden." Sarah's smile softened. "I remember every single detail of that day, Kyle. I remember how nervous you were and how hard you tried to hide it. I remember that you saved the flower I handed you. I have it still." Her expression was pure surprise. "You actually do?" "It is in my desk drawer. I could never bring myself to get rid of it." Their eyes met across the table, while Leo's gaze darted back and forth between them. "You had a date? Like the ones in the movies?" "That's right, pal," Kyle confirmed. "A very long time ago." "And you had feelings for each other?" "Deeply," Sarah replied, her voice filled with warmth. "Then why did you stay away for so long?" Leo's question was completely innocent, yet it struck a raw nerve. The smile on Sarah's face faltered a little. "I never wanted to be away, my love. Some very bad people kept me away. But I have returned now, and I will not leave you again." "You promise?" "I promise." For the remainder of their breakfast, they talked about safer topics. Sarah inquired about Leo's favorite meals, his nightly routine, and the things that made him giggle. Kyle felt himself finally relaxing as he observed how effortlessly she fit into their son's world. There was no discomfort, no fumbling, only a sincere and gentle curiosity. When they were finished, Leo was adamant that he show Sarah the storybook he had with him. They settled on the sofa together. Leo pressed close against her as she read to him, her voice a gentle, calming murmur. Kyle watched from the window, wanting to give them their moment, but he found it impossible to tear his eyes away. He was watching a ghost of a life he thought was gone forever. This simple, precious chance at being a family. "Kyle." Sarah's voice broke through his reverie. "Do you want to come sit with us?" He moved across the room, taking a seat on Leo's other side. The little boy instantly shifted to rest against him, becoming the link that connected his parents. They read the rest of the book as a team, each taking different voices for the characters, which sent Leo into fits of laughter. As the tale concluded, Leo let out a big yawn. I feel sleepy now. That is perfectly fine, buddy. You can take a nap right here. Kyle began to rise, but Sarah's hand reached over Leo to gently touch his arm. Do not go, she said. Please, we have more time. And so, Kyle remained. Leo drifted to sleep nestled between them, his small head resting on Kyle's lap while his hand clutched Sarah's. A peaceful quiet settled over them for a long time. The only sounds were their soft breaths and the feeling of just existing together. Thank you, Sarah finally said in a whisper, for having faith in me, for bringing him to me, for giving us this opportunity. I should have trusted you from the very beginning, Kyle admitted. I should have challenged every single thing I was told. Instead, I wasted 3 years furious at a memory while you were... He could not bring himself to finish. You had no way of knowing. How could you possibly have known? I should have followed my gut instead of the manufactured proof. Kyle gazed at Leo's peaceful, sleeping face. The moment I saw him reach out for you at that park, a part of me recognized the truth. He understood it before I did. Children have a way of seeing the truth, Sarah murmured. They are not burdened by our defenses and anxieties. I need to know it all, Kyle stated abruptly. Not only what they did to you, but everything before. What was on your mind, what you were experiencing when you pleaded with me to run away with you. I need to understand what our life was like before it was stolen from us. Sarah adjusted her position, taking care not to disturb Leo. I was terrified, she confessed. I was afraid of the world you lived in, and of it consuming you. But I was never afraid of you. I could see the person you truly were, past the tough exterior you showed everyone. You showed me kindness, and you were gentle. You made me smile. You inspired me to be a better person. You were already a good man, Kyle. The problem was, you never saw it yourself. They spoke for hours as Leo slept, recounting old stories and piecing together the past. Sarah shared her most cherished memories of their time together, the small moments she had clung to during her time away. Kyle described the day Leo was born, admitting how scared he had been, and how holding his son for the first time rearranged his entire world. I wish I could have been there, Sarah said, her voice heavy with unshed tears. I wish you had been as well, but you are here with us now. That is all that is important. When Leo finally woke, they played quiet games and made drawings. The afternoon slipped by, full of gentle joy and rediscovered affection. A tension Kyle did not realize he was carrying finally eased. For the first time in years, he lowered his defenses and let himself feel a flicker of hope. As dusk began to fall, Leo posed a question. Can Sarah come to our house with us, Dad? Kyle and Sarah's eyes met. Not right now, pal, Kyle answered softly. Sarah has to remain here where she is protected for a bit longer. But we are coming back tomorrow, and the day after that. We will be here every day. But why is she not able to come right now? Kyle struggled to find the proper explanation. Because sometimes we have to be careful to build things strong so they will last. We need to be sure Sarah is absolutely protected, and our house needs some work before it is perfect for her. This was not the whole story, but it was close enough to the truth. Kyle knew he had to eliminate Kozlov and any other accomplices before Sarah could ever step foot in his home. He had to be certain no dangers were lurking. Leo took this in with the simple trust of a child. Okay, but we will be back first thing in the morning, won't we? First thing, Kyle vowed. When it was time to go, Leo gave Sarah a fierce hug. I love you, Sarah. She held him tightly, her own voice thick with emotion. I love you too, my sweet boy, more than words can say. Kyle paused at the doorway, observing them. As Sarah met his gaze over Leo's hair, he saw a look of thanks, of deep affection, and of a profound connection he had almost forgotten. I will see you tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow, she confirmed. For once, Leo was silent in the car during the ride home. Then he spoke. Dad, I have a feeling we are all going to be very, very happy. A small smile touched Kyle's lips. I have that feeling too, pal. That evening, long after Leo was in bed, Kyle was in his study, poring over the file Bodyguard 2 had assembled. With every page he turned, more of the puzzle clicked into place. Viktor Koslov had been colluding with Kyle's former right-hand man for a minimum of half a year leading up to the bombing. Financial records, clandestine appointments, a trail of buried secrets. But the thing that worried Kyle the most was the current intelligence. Koslov was acting with a new, audacious confidence just within the last week, as if he sensed a shift in the game. Kyle's phone buzzed. It was his security chief. Boss, we've got a problem. Koslov gave a statement to the press late this afternoon. He's making allegations that you've been disrupting his legitimate business interests. He has paperwork, manifests, enough to generate serious heat. Kyle's hand clenched around the phone. What kind of heat? The type that gets the federal government involved. And boss. He alluded to a woman. He did not use a name, but he claimed you were detaining someone who has inside knowledge of your organization. He is aware that she is alive. Kyle got up and began to pace by the window. How? We are still trying to determine that. But if he has this information, he is going to leverage it. He will paint you as unstable, as a threat. He could poison the well, make your own crew doubt you if he handles it correctly. After he hung up, Kyle remained at the window, lost in thought. Kozlov's knowledge of Sarah changed the entire situation. She was once again a liability, a vulnerability for his enemies to use against him. Even worse, that vulnerability now extended to Leo. The cold logic of his world offered only one solution. He had to send Sarah away, relocate her from the city, establish a new identity for her somewhere distant, and provide her with protection. It was the only way to guarantee his son's safety. It was the smart, strategic choice to protect everyone. Yet, the very idea of telling her felt like a betrayal. The following morning, Kyle was uncharacteristically silent during the trip to the safe house. Leo picked up on it instantly. Dad, are you feeling sad? No, pal. Just thinking about Sarah. Yes. Is it good thinking or worried thinking? Kyle met his son's eyes in the rearview mirror. It is worried thinking. But I am trying to fix it. When they got there, Sarah was already there with a welcoming smile, but it vanished as soon as she registered Kyle's expression. What is the matter? Let us get Leo situated first. They went about the routine of breakfast, but a heavy tension replaced the light-hearted mood of the day before. Leo sensed it as well. He grew quiet, his gaze fixed on his father with undisguised concern. Once they had finished eating, Kyle addressed his bodyguard. Could you take Leo to see the books in the next room? We need a moment. But Dad, I want to be with Sarah. Just for a short while, buddy. We have to discuss some adult matters. Leo's brow furrowed in worry, but he obediently took the bodyguard's hand and was led from the room. The second they were by themselves, Sarah said, Do not soften it, Kyle. What happened? Kyle inhaled deeply. Viktor Koslov is aware that you are alive. He is making his move publicly, creating trouble, and he is a danger, Sarah. A danger to you, to me, and to Leo. So what does that mean? It means my first instinct is to get you out of the city, to find a place for you somewhere else, a place where he will never be able to reach you. The words felt like acid in his mouth. Only until I can handle him. It would only be temporary. All the warmth drained from Sarah's face. You want me to go away? I want you to be secure. I want Leo to be secure. We only just reconnected, Kyle. After 3 years, we have just started to feel like a family again. And you are asking me to leave once more? Not leave. Just go somewhere else that is safe until this danger has passed. And how much time will that require? A few weeks? A few months? Am I supposed to wait another 3 years? Her voice began to climb. I have been separated from my son for his whole life. I refuse to lose another single day. I do not want that for you either. But, but what? But you are afraid. Well, get in line, Kyle. I am absolutely terrified. I live with that fear every second of every day. But I am done running. Before Kyle could form a reply, the door flew open with a crash. Leo was standing in the doorway, his face streaked with tears and his little body shaking with sobs. He had clearly been listening from the hall. "No!" the child screamed. "Dad, you are not allowed to make her leave. I will not let you do it." "Leo, pal, come over here." Kyle held out a hand for him, but Leo rushed right past him and threw himself at Sarah. "Please do not go." "Leo." Leo wrapped his arms around his mother. "Please do not go. You made a promise you would stay." Sarah held him close, looking over their son's head at Kyle with tears filling her eyes. "I made a promise," she said with force, "and I honor my promises." Kyle watched them, feeling a wall inside him crumble. It was not a painful collapse, but a necessary one. He had been so fixated on threats and dangers, on keeping everyone safe through distance and control. But seeing Leo's tear-streaked face and Sarah's resolute expression, he understood. They were more powerful together than they ever could be apart. "You are right," Kyle said in a low voice. "Both of you, you are right." Leo's head shot up. "We are?" "Yes." Kyle walked over to them, kneeling to be on the same level as Leo. "Sarah is not going anywhere. Neither are you. We are staying together, and we are going to navigate this as a family." "Truly?" Leo's voice was small and full of hope. "Truly. I was afraid. And when I get afraid, I try to control things, but that is not fair to you or your mother." Kyle looked at Sarah. "I am sorry. I am still learning how to manage this, how to be part of a family once more." Sarah reached up and touched his face gently. "We are all learning, but we will learn as one, okay? No more making massive decisions by yourself. No more attempting to shield us by keeping us at a distance. Together." Kyle consented. "But Sarah, I need you to be aware. Kozlov is a menace. If you stay, things will become very hard. There will be dangers, maybe even violence. I can keep you safe, but it will not be a simple task." "I endured 3 years of hell," Sarah stated plainly. "I think I can handle hard." Leo embraced them both. "So we are really staying together for all time." Kyle and Sarah gazed at one another, and a silent message passed between them. It was not quite love, not yet, but it was trust, a partnership, the start of something authentic. "For all time," Kyle said. "For all time," Sarah echoed. The rest of the morning felt lighter. They played games with Leo, read stories, and discussed what the next steps would be. Kyle clarified that Sarah would have to remain at the safe house for a bit longer, just until he could ensure their home security was completely updated. But he promised daily visits, and this time, it was not about keeping them separated. It was about doing things the right way. "How long until I am able to come home?" Sarah asked. "A few more days? Perhaps a week? I want to be certain every vulnerability is addressed, every potential danger is dealt with." Kyle squeezed her hand. "But you will come home. That is a promise. I trust you." That evening, Bodyguard 2 pulled Kyle aside. "Boss, I have been monitoring Kozlov's actions. He is getting bolder, but he is also getting careless. He is making errors. If we act with precision, we might be able to turn the situation in our favor. What do you need? Time, resources, and authorization to dig deeper. You have all three. Find me everything. Me. I need to know his vulnerabilities, his points of pressure, his secrets. If he wants to threaten my family, he is about to find out what occurs when you push a wolf into a corner." Bodyguard 2 smiled. "Understood, boss." Later, as Kyle drove Leo home, his son chattered happily about Sarah, already outlining what they would do tomorrow. Kyle listened and experienced a feeling he had not known in 3 years. Hope. They were going to be fine. Koslov was a danger. But Kyle had confronted worse and prevailed. And now he had a reason worth fighting for again. This was not an empire built from grief and anger, but a family constructed from love and second chances. He could work with that. Over the next 3 days, Kyle settled into a new pattern. Mornings were spent with Leo at the safe house, afternoons were for handling business, and evenings he returned to Sarah for dinner. Slowly, deliberately, they were constructing something that felt like a family. On the fourth morning, Kyle arrived to find Sarah and Leo already on the couch, engaged in a deep discussion. They did not see him at first, and he paused at the entrance to watch them. "So, you truly never wanted to leave Papa?" Leo was asking. "Never," Sarah said with certainty. "I loved him. I still do. I wanted all of us to be together in a place that was safe and joyful." "Then why did the bad man claim you left?" "Because he told a lie, sweetheart. Some people lie to obtain what they want, and he wanted to inflict pain on your papa." Leo was silent for a second, thinking. Then he spoke. "Papa keeps a photograph of you in his desk. He believes I am unaware, but I have seen it." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "He does?" "Yes. And he speaks to it sometimes when he thinks I am asleep. He tells you about me, about activities we did that day. I think he missed you very much." Kyle's throat felt tight. He had not been aware that Leo knew. He had not realized his son had been listening to those midnight admissions of grief. "I missed him also," Sarah said quietly. "Every single day. They told me horrible things, Leo. They insisted your papa had forgotten me, that he was pleased I was gone. They said you—" Her voice shattered. "They said you did not make it, that I had lost you before I even had a chance to hold you. But that was a lie too, correct? The most significant lie of all." Sarah drew him into a tight hug. "Because here you are, perfect and wonderful, and you are mine." Leo pulled away to look at her seriously. "Did they injure you while you were locked up?" Kyle moved forward quickly. "Leo, that is not—" "It is okay," Sarah cut in gently. She faced their son with calm honesty. "Yes, they did hurt me sometimes. It was terrifying and sad. But I got through it because I had hope. Hope that someday I would be free. Hope that somewhere out there you and your papa were all right." "Were you brave?" "I tried to be. Some days were more difficult than others, but I never surrendered because surrendering meant never seeing you, and I had to see you." She touched his face softly. "I had to meet my son." Leo threw his arms around her neck. "I am so happy you did not surrender. I am so happy you found us." Kyle sat beside them, and Leo at once climbed onto his lap, forming their now familiar link between his parents. They sat together in silence, the significance of the conversation settling upon them. "Papa," Leo said after a time, "when is Sarah coming home for real? To our house?" Kyle exchanged a look with Sarah. "Soon, buddy. I am making certain everything is safe first. But you said that days ago. How much more safe does it need to get?" "Leo is right," Sarah said. "Kyle, we cannot exist in fear forever. At a certain point, we have to just begin living." "I know. I am handling it." Kyle ran a hand through his hair. "Bodyguard 2 is monitoring Koslov's movements. We are collecting intelligence, identifying weaknesses. When we have sufficient information, we will take action." "And then?" Sarah asked. "And then I resolve the situation with him permanently." Kyle's voice was resolute, but not cruel. "He made a threat against my family. That action will have a response. I do not want you to get hurt. I will not be. I am cautious." He squeezed her hand. "But I have to conclude this before we can truly begin again. Before I can bring you home and not be concerned every second that someone is going to make a move." Sarah nodded slowly. "I understand. Just do not take an excessive amount of time, okay? We have already lost 3 years. I do not want to lose any additional time. You will not. I promise." Leo looked up at both of them. When Sarah comes home, can she sleep in the room next to mine so I'm able to say goodnight to her? Kyle and Sarah both smiled. Yes, Kyle said. She can sleep wherever she would like. Good, Leo yawned, getting more comfortable between them. Because families are supposed to be together. A child's simple words cut right through his confusion. Kyle realized his 2-year-old son had just solved a problem that had tormented him for days. A family was not about a life without danger or perfect situations. It was about the deliberate choice to face those dangers together. You are completely right, buddy, Kyle whispered. That is precisely what makes a family. That single thought resonated with Kyle for the rest of the day. He went back to the safe house alone that evening. Leo was staying with a trusted caretaker because Kyle needed to speak with Sarah when no small ears were around to listen. There were important matters that had waited too long to be discussed. She was seated by the window when he got there, observing the sunset color the sky in shades of orange and pink. She appeared better every day, healthier, stronger, more like the woman he recalled. "Hi," she said, turning as he came in. "Where's Leo?" "At home. I wanted to speak with you privately." Kyle sat across from her. "There are subjects we have not covered yet. Things I must know." Sarah nodded, her expression composed. "Ask me anything. The 3 years you were in captivity. I know it was horrendous, but I require specifics. Locations, names, anyone who helped to guard you. Anything at all that could help me learn who else was complicit." "I can give you some of that. But Kyle, they relocated me frequently. Basements, warehouses, deserted structures. I was never certain of my exact location. And the guards rotated. Some were brutal, others were merely indifferent. I do not know their true names." "What about your escape? How did you get free?" Sarah inhaled deeply. "After your second-in-command passed away, the guards became disorganized. They debated about what my fate should be. Some wished to let me go. Others wanted to keep me as leverage in the event you ever learned the truth. Last week, one of them failed to lock a door during a dispute with another guard. I just fled. I did not think, I did not plan. I just ran. And you came directly to the city. Why not go somewhere else? Someplace safer? Because you were here. Leo was here. Even if I was not aware of Leo yet, I knew I had to locate you to explain the truth." She looked down at her hands. "I had no strategy beyond that point. I was surviving on the streets. I would hide by day and search for any clue I could find at night. And then, I was in the park that afternoon, and I saw you with Leo. It all clicked into place." Kyle leaned in closer. "Sarah, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely truthful. Is there any evidence? Anything tangible that can help me prove what they did to you?" "What do you mean?" he asked. "Papers, recordings, anything at all that points to who was behind this or what their plan was." She moved her head from side to side. "I am so sorry. They were meticulous. I was never allowed a phone, never near a computer. There were only locked rooms and silent guards." After a moment, she spoke again. "But I do have one thing. I cannot say if it will be useful, but it is something only you and I could ever know. Something that would be impossible for anyone to forge." "What is it?" Sarah's fingers drifted to her collarbone. "Can you recall the evening you asked me to marry you?" The air caught in Kyle's throat. He had not shared that memory with a single person. That was their secret, a private promise the world knew nothing about. "We never had a wedding," Sarah said in a low voice. "We never even announced our engagement. But you gave me a ring that night. It was a delicate silver band with 3 small stones. You told me they stood for the past, the present, and the future. Our 3 opportunities for happiness." "I remember." Kyle's voice was thick with emotion. "You placed it on my right hand, not my left, because I was still working at the clinic and wanted to avoid questions. I had it on every single day, right up until the night they came for me." She slipped her hand into her pocket and drew out a small object. One of the men discovered it in my belongings and was about to toss it out. I pleaded with him to let me have it. I lied and said it was my grandmother's, that it had no value to anyone but me. He held on to it for months before giving it back to me on a day he felt merciful. She uncurled her fingers. Resting in her palm, tarnished from time and wear but absolutely unmistakable, was the ring Kyle had given her 4 years before. His hands trembled as he reached out to take it. He had purchased it from a little jewelry shop downtown, using half a month's salary, and presented it to her on a rooftop just after midnight. She had wept as she said yes, then kissed him as if she would never stop. "You held on to it," he breathed. "It was the only piece of you, of our life together that I had. When they insisted you had forgotten me, I would look at this ring and know they were lying, because the man who gave this to me would never just forget." Kyle rotated the small band in his fingers. On the inner surface, almost too faint to read, were their initials, KT and SV. He had asked the jeweler to add them as a surprise. "Nobody else knows this ring exists," he said. "Not even the people closest to me. It was only for us." "Only for us," Sarah affirmed. A knot of tension deep inside Kyle's chest finally came undone. The last piece of his doubt, the final barrier he had built around his heart, disintegrated. She was speaking the truth. She had been telling the truth all along. And he had thrown away 3 years convinced of a lie while the woman he loved had been enduring it all alone. "I am so sorry." The words were fractured. "Oh God, Sarah, I am so sorry. I should have realized. I should have searched harder, demanded more answers. Instead, I accepted the worst and tried to move on as if you were nothing to me. You had no way of knowing. The proof they showed you looked authentic. I should have listened to my gut instead of the evidence. My heart was telling me something was not right. I just refused to hear it." Sarah enclosed his hands with hers. "We are not able to change what happened, Kyle. All we can do is go forward from here. And I refuse to go forward weighed down by anger and what-ifs. I want to build something new with our future. How can you forgive me after everything? Because carrying that anger around only poisons me. Because you are fighting now. Because our son deserves to have two parents who are whole, not shattered by bitterness." She gave his hands a gentle squeeze. "And because I still love you. I never stopped loving you." Kyle gathered her into an embrace, holding her firmly against him. They stood that way for a long time, simply sharing the same air, allowing the pressure of 3 years to finally dissipate. When they separated, Kyle gently slid the ring onto Sarah's finger, on her right hand, just as it was before. "I never stopped either," he said. "Loving you. I made myself try, but it was impossible." Sarah gave him a tearful smile. "So what is next?" "Next, we end this for good. I will take care of Kozlov. We will bring you home, and we will begin again. The three of us, as a family." "As a family," Sarah echoed. And for the first time in 3 long years, Kyle felt that it might actually be achievable. The following morning delivered unexpected information. Bodyguard 2 contacted him early, his voice strained with urgency. "Boss, you need to come to the office right away. We uncovered something major on Kozlov." Kyle arrived at the headquarters in under 20 minutes. His entire security detail had covered the conference table with documents and laptop displays, all filled with financial statements, private messages, and surveillance clips. "Tell me what you have," Kyle commanded. "Kozlov got careless," Bodyguard 2 began. "He has been boasting. He got overconfident after he thought he had won 3 years back, and now his guard is down. We have audio of him discussing the entire setup. It is not enough to take to the police, but it is more than enough for us. Let me hear it." They activated the audio file. It was Kozlov's voice, captured at a secret meeting 2 weeks prior, chuckling about how easily Kyle was tricked, how the doctored video was produced, and how the explosion was timed perfectly. He even mentioned that keeping Sarah alive was a form of insurance that, luckily for him, he never had to cash in. Kyle's hands balled into tight fists. He knew she was alive this entire time. He knew. Yes. And boss, there is something else. He is organizing a new move. We are not sure of the details yet, but he has been shifting assets and putting his men into position. Whatever he is planning, it is going to happen very soon. Then we will strike first. Kyle's tone was eerily calm, but lethal. I want him watched 24 hours a day. Every single meeting, every call, every move he makes. And I want our people ready to go. When he finally makes his move, we are going to be there waiting for him. What are your orders for the woman and the child? If this situation turns bad, they are to remain secure. Double the guards at the safe house, and position a new team at my residence. Absolutely nothing gets through. Kyle surveyed his assembled lieutenants. Kozlov tried to start a war 3 years ago, and he got what he wanted. Now, it looks like he wants to finish it. But he will find that I am ready this time. The strategy session lasted for hours, as they mapped out plans and backup plans. When Kyle finally departed, it was late in the afternoon. He drove directly to the safe house, feeling a need to see Sarah to center himself before the chaos began. He found her in the kitchen with Leo, showing him the art of making cookies. A fine layer of flour coated their clothes, and Leo had a smear of chocolate across his cheek. They were laughing, lost in their activity. Kyle paused in the doorway to watch them, committing the image to memory. This was the reason he was fighting. It was not for land or influence or even revenge. It was for this, his family, safe and joyful and together. Papa. Leo noticed him and came running, leaving white handprints on Kyle's dark trousers. Look, we baked cookies. Well, Sarah did most of it, and I was her helper. I can see that, Kyle said with a smile, tousling his son's hair. They look amazing. They will be done in about 10 minutes, Sarah said, drying her hands on a cloth. She studied Kyle's expression and her own smile faded a little. What is it? Nothing is wrong. In fact, for the first time, things are finally going our way. He looked down at Leo. Hey buddy, could you go get your hands clean? We can have some cookies as soon as they cool down. Leo hurried off toward the bathroom. As soon as he was out of sight, Kyle faced Sarah. I have proof. Audio files of Kozlov admitting everything he did. It is not something I can use with the police, but it gives me a clear idea of who I need to go after. When? Sarah asked with simplicity. It will be soon, possibly in a few days or maybe a few weeks. He is preparing for something, which means we have to proceed with caution. Kyle took both of her hands. But Sarah, once this is finished, once Kozlov is handled and the danger is gone, I need you to come home. For real, home. No more visits, no more safe houses. I want you back in our house, as a permanent part of our life. I want that more than anything. Then we have a plan. 1 more week, 7 days, to allow my team to finalize their intelligence and put our plan into action. 7 days where I visit you and Leo every day, so you two can continue to build your bond. After that, no matter the outcome, you come home. We will handle whatever follows as a united family. Sarah wrapped her arms around his neck. Thank you for finally believing me, for being willing to fight for us, for offering us this new beginning. I should be the one thanking you, for surviving, for not losing hope, and for somehow still loving me after all of it. Kyle held her close. I will never be good enough for you, but I will spend the rest of my days trying to be. Leo returned, his hands still wet. Are the cookies ready now? They both chuckled, separating to see to their impatient son. The rest of the evening was spent eating warm cookies, playing board games, and acting for a few short, precious hours, as if the rest of the world was gone. When it was time for him to go, Leo gave Sarah an extra long hug. Just 1 more week until you are home for good, he said. I am going to count every day. Me too, my love. As Kyle drove Leo back to the house, his son talked excitedly about how they would decorate Sarah's new room and all the plans they would make together. Kyle listened, feeling something he had not experienced in a very long time. It was genuine, unwavering hope, the kind that had no room for doubt. They were going to succeed, all three of them, as one. The week was a whirlwind of preparations. Kyle's people worked non-stop, collecting information on Kozlov, while Kyle dedicated every free second to being with Sarah and Leo. With each passing day, they grew closer, mending wounds that had been left to fester for 3 years. On the sixth day, Bodyguard 2 provided the update Kyle had been anticipating. "We have him, boss. Kozlov has been skimming money from his own operation. His inner circle is still in the dark, but when they learn the truth, he is done. We also have information that connects him to 3 cold cases the police have been looking into. Anonymous tips are being sent as we speak. But that was not all. We also discovered that Kozlov has been planning to frame you for a series of crimes. He has forged documents, fake witnesses, the whole operation. He was going to destroy your reputation and take everything you built." Kyle felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. When is he making his move? Tomorrow night. He has a meeting with his top lieutenants at his warehouse on the waterfront. Then that is where we will be. Kyle's voice was steel. "I want every exit covered. I want his own people to see exactly who he is. And I want him to know that the woman he tried to destroy is the reason his empire is falling apart." What about the authorities? They will receive an anonymous package tonight. Bank records, audio files, evidence connecting him to 3 unsolved crimes. By the time we are finished with him, the police will be waiting at his doorstep. And the woman? Does she know? Kyle paused. Not yet. But she deserves to see this end. She deserves to look him in the eye and know that she won. The night before the operation, Kyle sat with Sarah in the safe house after Leo had fallen asleep. He told her everything. The plan, the evidence, the fact that Kozlov would be exposed and arrested within 24 hours. Sarah listened in silence. When he finished, she spoke. "I want to be there." Kyle shook his head immediately. "It is too dangerous. I cannot risk—" "Kyle." She cut him off, her voice firm. "For 3 years, that man controlled my life. He decided when I ate, when I slept, whether I lived or died. He told me my child was dead. He made me believe everyone I loved had forgotten me." Her eyes were blazing now. "I am not asking for revenge. I am asking for closure. I need to look him in the eye and let him see that he failed. I need him to know that despite everything he did, I survived. I found my family. And I won." Kyle studied her face for a long moment. He saw the strength there, the same strength that had kept her alive through 3 years of captivity, the same strength that had brought her back to him. "All right," he said finally. "But you stay in the car until I say it is safe, and you will have 2 guards with you at all times." "Agreed." Sarah reached for his hand. "Thank you for understanding." He brought her hand to his lips. "Thank you for being the bravest person I have ever known." The following night, everything came together. Kyle's team moved with precision. They surrounded Kozlov's warehouse just as his meeting began. Inside, Kozlov was standing before his top lieutenants, outlining his plan to destroy Kyle Thorne once and for all. He never got to finish. The doors burst open. Kyle's men flooded in, armed and ready. Kozlov's own people, confronted with evidence of his betrayal and theft, stepped aside. They were not going to die for a man who had been stealing from them for years. Kozlov stood alone in the center of the warehouse, his face white with shock. Kyle walked toward him, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "Hello, Victor." Kozlov tried to regain his composure. "Kyle, this is unexpected. I am sure we can work something out." "Work something out?" Kyle's voice was dangerously quiet. "You stole 3 years of my life. You kidnapped the woman I love. You made her believe our child was dead. You made me believe she betrayed me. And now you want to work something out? I was protecting my interests. It was just business." "Business." Kyle laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me tell you what is about to happen, Victor. The police are on their way. They have evidence connecting you to 3 unsolved crimes. Your bank accounts have been frozen. Your own men have turned on you. By tomorrow morning, you will have nothing. Kozlov's face twisted with rage. You think you have won? You think this is over? No, Kyle said. I do not think I have won. I know it. But there is someone else who deserves to tell you that herself. He turned and signaled toward the door. Sarah stepped into the warehouse. She walked slowly, deliberately, her head held high. The guards that had terrorized her for 3 years shrank back as she passed. Kozlov's eyes went wide with disbelief. You, he breathed. You should be dead? Sarah finished for him. Broken? Forgotten? She stopped directly in front of him, close enough to see the fear flickering in his eyes. You kept me in a basement for 1,095 days. You told me my baby was dead. You told me the man I loved had replaced me. You tried to burn away my identity. You did everything in your power to destroy me. She leaned closer. And here I am, standing in front of you, whole, free, with my son waiting for me at home and the man I love standing beside me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You failed, Victor. You failed completely. And the woman you tried to erase is the reason you are losing everything tonight. Kozlov opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. In the distance, police sirens began to wail. Kyle stepped forward and placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder. We are done here. They turned and walked out together, leaving Kozlov standing alone in the wreckage of his empire. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. Sarah took a deep breath, then another, and then she began to cry. Not from sadness, but from relief. From the overwhelming realization that it was finally, truly over. Kyle pulled her into his arms and held her while she wept. You did it, he murmured against her hair. You survived everything. And you won. We won, she corrected him. All 3 of us. In the car, on the way to pick up Leo, Sarah reached for Kyle's hand. What happens now? Now? Kyle smiled. Now we go home. All of us. Together. And we stay together? Forever. No more safe houses. No more hiding. Just us, Leo, and the rest of our lives. Sarah closed her eyes and let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for 3 years. Home, she whispered. I am finally going home. 2 hours later, they pulled into the driveway of a modest house on a quiet street. Leo was waiting at the door, bouncing with excitement. Is Sarah staying? Is she staying for real this time? Kyle lifted his son into his arms. Yes, buddy. She is staying for real. Forever. Leo let out a whoop of joy and reached for Sarah. She took him from Kyle and held him close, breathing in the scent of his hair, feeling his small arms wrap around her neck. Welcome home, Mama, Leo said. It was the first time he had called her that. Sarah's tears fell freely now, but she was smiling. Thank you, baby. Thank you for finding me. They walked inside together. The house was warm and filled with light. Leo immediately grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her toward his room. I have to show you everything, my toys and my books and my dinosaurs and… His chatter faded as they disappeared down the hallway. Kyle stood in the doorway watching them go. 3 years ago, he had believed he lost everything. Tonight, he understood that he had been given something far more precious than revenge. He had been given a second chance. Later that night, after Leo was asleep, Kyle and Sarah stood in the hallway between their rooms. The house was quiet, and for the first time in years, that silence felt peaceful instead of lonely. I do not know how to thank you, Sarah said softly, for fighting for us, for believing me, for bringing me home. Kyle took her hands in his. You survived 3 years of hell. You never gave up hope. You found your way back to us. He shook his head. You do not need to thank me for anything. I should be thanking you. For what? For teaching me what real strength looks like. For showing our son what it means to never give up. For loving me even when I did not deserve it. Sarah reached up and touched his face. We have a lot of time to make up for. We have the rest of our lives. She smiled through her tears. That sounds perfect. From down the hallway, a small voice called out, Mama? Papa? Are you still there? They looked at each other, and something passed between them. Not just love, but partnership, understanding, a promise of everything to come. They walked to Leo's room together. We are here, buddy, Kyle said. We are both here, Sarah added. Leo settled back into his pillow, a smile on his face. Good, because families stay together. Sarah sat on one side of the bed, Kyle sat on the other, and Leo, nestled safely between his parents for the first time in his life, closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. In the weeks that followed, Viktor Kozlov was tried and convicted on multiple charges. His empire crumbled, his assets were seized, his name became a cautionary tale. But none of that mattered to the Thorne family. What mattered was the breakfast table where 3 people sat together every morning. What mattered was the garden where Sarah planted jasmine flowers while Leo helped with his small plastic shovel. What mattered was the bedtime routine, where Kyle read stories and Sarah tucked in the covers, and Leo fell asleep knowing, truly knowing, that he was loved. 6 months later, Kyle and Sarah stood in that same garden. Leo was playing nearby, chasing butterflies with the single-minded determination of a happy child. Kyle turned to Sarah. I have something for you. He pulled out a small box. Inside was a new ring. Simple, elegant. 3 stones, just like before. The first ring represented our past, Kyle said. This one represents our future. If you will have me. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Kyle got down on one knee. Serafina Vasco, will you marry me? For real this time. With a ceremony and guests and Leo throwing flower petals everywhere. Sarah laughed through her tears. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Leo came running over. What is happening? What did I miss? Kyle scooped him up. Your mother just agreed to marry me, buddy. Leo's eyes went wide. Does this mean we are a real family now? Sarah knelt down to his level. We have always been a real family, sweetheart. But now we are going to make it official. Can I be in the wedding? You can be the most important person in the wedding. Leo pumped his fist in the air. Best day ever. They stood together in the garden, the 3 of them. The sun was warm on their faces, the jasmine was blooming, and for the first time in 4 long years, everything felt exactly right. This story was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited to deliver meaningful lessons and real value to your life. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. Sarah spent 3 years in darkness, believing she had lost everything. But she never stopped hoping. She never stopped fighting. And in the end, her strength brought her home. If you are going through something difficult right now, remember this. Your story is not over. The people who try to break you do not get to decide how your story ends. You do. And sometimes, the very thing that was meant to destroy you becomes the reason you find a strength you never knew you had. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what is coming next. So do not go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you will not regret it. You will not.